Hello, welcome to the Wire Podcast, a podcast that provides the best content about all things sports. I'm Ryan McCrary, and on today's episode, we're going to get things started by talking about Game 1 of the NBA Finals, which was last night. We'll discuss everything that happened in that game. After that, we'll talk about the Lakers head coach search. We got some big news regarding that earlier this week. And then lastly, to close out the podcast, we'll talk about a few receivers in the NFL who recently signed contract extensions. And we'll talk about the receiver market in general in the NFL. And that's what we have on tap for today's episode. I hope you're excited. I know I am. And let's go ahead and dive right in. Alright, let's get this show started by talking about Game 1 of the NBA Finals between the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. Before I get into this, I do want to apologize for not releasing a podcast in a while. It's been a good bit. I've just been really busy with stuff, and so I apologize about that. Wanted to start the podcast with that. But last night was Game 1 of this year's NBA Finals, and the Celtics were incredible. They were dominant in Game 1, winning 107-89 at home. It was a big win for the Celtics in Game 1, and the Mavericks struggled. And we'll talk about all of that today. Starting off with the first quarter. The first quarter was amazing for the Celtics. They were up 37-20 after the first. And they continued to dominate in the second quarter. They were up big at halftime. The Mavs did go on a big run in the third quarter to cut the deficit to 9. However, the Celtics responded with a 16-2 run to regain their large lead. And like I said earlier, the Celtics were really, really good in this game. Their offense performed extremely well. They had a really balanced attack offensively. Everyone in their starting lineup scored in the double digits. They were moving the ball well. They were able to get a lot of open threes, and they were knocking them down. And so they were taking advantage of the good shots they were creating on offense with their ball movement. They hit 38.1% of their threes in this game, had 9 more threes than the Mavericks, and that's 9 more threes made. Not threes attempted, but made three-pointers than the Mavericks did, which is a huge advantage in of itself. But they also grabbed 55 rebounds. I think they had 5 more rebounds than the Mavericks did. And then they I think they had a little bit more assists, and they had 15 steals and blocks combined in this game, which was incredible. They were just really, really good in this game, super effective. Only scored 107 points on offense, which isn't a ton, but their defense stepped up in a big way, and they were able to create open looks offensively. Like I said earlier, they had a really balanced attack offensively. One player I wanted to give a huge shout out to for the Celtics is Kristaps Porzingis. He has missed, I believe, the last 10 games due to an injury. He returned last night and was incredible. I mean, he was amazing. There was one stretch in this game where he would hit really big shots on offense, whether it be at the top of the free throw line or from 3, and then on the other end of the floor, he would come up with a big block. And so he was just absolutely dominant in this game. And I want to pull up the box score to see what his numbers looked like in this game. In Game 1, Porzingis came off the bench, which is not normal, but he was coming back from injury, and so he only played 20 minutes. But he was super effective. Had 20 points, 6 rebounds, 0 assists, but 3 blocks, only 1 turnover and 1 foul. Had a plus-minus of plus 13. He shot 8 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from the three-point line, and had a true shooting percentage of 72% and a box plus-minus of 16, which was the best on the team among players who were playing, legitimate minutes in this game. So shout out to Porzingis. He was incredible. He was amazing in this game. And if he plays like this, it's going to be a quick series, in my opinion. The Celtics really need him. When he's on the floor, they're a historically dominant team. And if he's able, to play a lot of minutes in the series and be super effective when he's on the floor, I think the Celtics will be able to win the championship in quick fashion. Now, he wasn't the only player that played well for the Celtics. Jaylen Brown also played really well in this game, and he was great on both ends of the floor. He had 22 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. He was super active defensively, had 2 turnovers, 3 fouls, shot 7 for 12 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and 6 for 11 from the free throw line. Had a true shooting percentage of, 65.3%, despite not being that effective from the free throw line. But he was just really effective shooting inside the arc in this game. Had a really nice performance. But yeah, this was a good performance from the Celtics. And the Mavericks, they really struggled in this game, especially on offense. I thought they were too ISO heavy, and I know a lot of people were saying that. They were really just too reliant on isolation sets. And their assist numbers reflect that. They had, I think, just 9 assists total as a team, and Luka himself only had 1 assist in this game. That's not normal. And you don't have to have a lot of assists to, have a good offensive performance. However, the fact that they were relying on isolation so much in this game is reflected in their low assist totals. So I think moving forward, they have to find a way to, move the ball more. And if they do that, I think that will allow them to create open shots more often. That will force the Celtics defense to have to rotate, to have to make smart rotations, to make smart decisions defensively. And I think it's just better to have more ball movement with your offense in the NBA. Another thing I wanted to point out with the Mavericks, they have to shoot better from 3, of course. They had a lot of open threes last night that they missed, that they have to make moving forward if they want to beat the Celtics. And of course, Kyrie Irving has to play better. He really struggled in this game. Not his best game by a long shot. He had, 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. Shot just 6 for 19 from the field, 0 for 5 from the three-point line, and had a shooting percentage of just 31.6%, and a box plus minus of negative 8.7. Not a good game for him. He's got to be a lot better moving forward. And the Mavericks as a team have to be better. Luka played fairly well last night. Wasn't super efficient, but put up big numbers. Was able to score a lot. But I think as a team, the Mavericks have to play better. They need more ball movement. Luka has to be better on defense. I saw a lot of clips on Twitter of him giving up easy drives, and so he's got to be better as an on-ball defender. And when he does get blown by, he's got to make better rotations. And so it'll be really interesting to see what kind of adjustments each team makes moving forward. But I was really impressed with what I saw from the Celtics in Game 1. If they can continue playing at this level, they can win this series really quickly in 4 or 5 games. But I don't expect every game to look like this. The Mavericks have been playing too well recently. The amount of star power they have on offense is just too good. And I think they will make some good adjustments heading into Game 2 that will allow them to get back into the series and play better moving forward. But yeah, a dominant win for the Celtics in Game 1. I was really impressed, and they looked like a championship-winning team, and that's the way that they've looked all season long. So I can't wait to see how this series goes moving forward. But yeah, it was an impressive performance for the Celtics in Game 1 at home. Those are my thoughts about Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Next up, we're going to talk about the Lakers head coach search. But before we do that, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back in just a second. All right, I am back. Now we can talk about the Los Angeles Lakers head coach search. Recently, I don't remember exactly when this report dropped, but recently, Shams reported that the Lakers were zeroing in on J.J. Redick as their frontrunner for their head coaching job. I think this was in May that report went live. And this was very interesting because we knew that J.J. Redick was being considered for the job, but I don't think a lot of people thought that he would, be a serious contender for the job. It was just kind of weird because JJ Redick has never coached at a super high level. He's never coached in college. He's never coached at the NBA level. He did play in the NBA for a long time and was a very good NBA player. Was like a very good role player. Was a starter in the league. One of the better shooters ever. Just a marksman as a 3-point shooter. And he's had a lot of success in media and broadcasting. He has his own podcast. He's been on First Take a lot. He calls games sometimes. And so he's been very successful since retiring from the NBA in terms of what he's been able to accomplish in media. He even has a podcast with LeBron James, which makes it super interesting that he was reportedly the front runner for the Lakers for this head coaching job. And so that was wild. And I remember seeing that report and thinking, wow, that is just really interesting. Because the Lakers head coach job, and I might get into this a little bit more later. I don't want to get into this too much now, but that's a hard job. There's a lot of pressure. I don't want to get into that too much. I want to get into that a little bit more later on in this episode, but it was just interesting news. But then we got another update with the head coach search earlier this week when Woj reported that the Lakers were preparing a massive offer for UConn head coach Dan Hurley, and that not only that, but that he has been their primary target since the beginning of their head coach search, which was really interesting news. So now it sounds like the Lakers aren't zeroing in on JJ Redick to be the next coach, but instead they're looking to sign UConn head coach Dan Hurley to a big contract. Interesting news. Woj versus Shams has been a big, rivalry over the last couple of years because Shams was kind of, a pupil to Woj. He was like Woj's student when they were working together. I believe at Yahoo Sports. I think that's when they were working together. Wherever it was that they were working, whatever company, Woj was like the student or was like the master, and Shams was a student. And so now they have kind of this little rivalry where they're trying. They're both news reporters. They try to get scoops within the NBA, and so it was interesting to see that it looks like Woj is going to get the upper hand once again. I know a lot of people were very critical of Shams after this because Shams, over the last year, a couple of times has reported false information. Whether that be, knowingly or unknowingly, he has reported false information a couple of times, and he now works for FanDuel. And so people are wondering if he is, purposefully, tweeting out false information to affect betting lines. That is just an allegation. I'm not saying that's true or that's what's actually happening. That is what people are speculating. Whether or not that's true, maybe we find out. We probably won't. But this kind of controversy with Shams was first highlighted last year during the 2023 NBA draft. Right before the NBA draft, I think the day of, or maybe, the couple of days leading up to the draft, Shams tweeted that the Hornets were going to take, or at least were zeroing in on Scoot Henderson, as the guy to take with the number 2 overall pick. That ended up not happening. The Hornets ended up choosing Brandon Miller. And you know who ended up reporting that? Woj. Woj, I believe, had more accurate reporting on what the Hornets were going to do with the number 2 overall pick. And so there's just been a lot of controversy with Shams and his reporting now that he is working for FanDuel. I do want to talk about Dan Hurley as a fit with the Lakers. This is super interesting. If you don't know who Dan Hurley is, I mentioned before that he is the head coach for UConn. He just won back-to-back national championships with the Huskies. He is the best coach in college basketball at the moment. Has completely rebuilt the UConn basketball program into a powerhouse. They were dominant in the NCAA tournament this year. They were dominant in the NCAA tournament last year. He has done a lot of great work with UConn, and so the fact that he is getting that NBA teams are interested in him is not a surprise. But I'm not sure that the Lakers are a good fit for him, and I'm not sure if he is a good fit for the Lakers, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sure if he's ever coached in the NBA. I can actually look that up right now just to confirm. Maybe he has coached in the NBA, and I just don't know. I think this will be his first NBA gig, and I just confirmed that to be true. This would be his first NBA gig. And I mentioned this earlier. The Lakers are a hard place to coach. You've got a lot of pressure. They're trying to win now. I know they haven't had a lot of success in the playoffs over the last couple of years, but when you have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, when you have those kind of players on your roster, you're trying to win games. And as far as we know right now, LeBron James is going to be on the roster for the foreseeable future. That could change. Who knows? But if that's the case, if LeBron James is going to be playing in Los Angeles for the next couple of years, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Hurley in Los Angeles, assuming that the Lakers are going to hire him. And with that, and that's a lot of pressure for a first-time head coach in the NBA. The NBA is a lot different than college. You're not recruiting. You're not recruiting like you are in college. You're dealing with grown adults who are, and I know that in college everyone is an adult, but it's different in the NBA when everyone is making millions of dollars, and a lot of players on your roster are making more money than the head coach. The players have a lot more control in the NBA. It's just a different environment. And so I wonder how Danny Hurley will handle that. And I do question if this is a good fit or not, because one of my concerns is that there's going to be a lot of pressure. Maybe Hurley struggles a little bit as he transitions into the NBA. And I worry that he may get fired early on in his tenure with the Lakers. I hope that's not the case. I did read a report the other day that the Lakers are interested in him because they think he can develop their young players like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and Max Christie, and so maybe that they are going to be patient with Hurley. Maybe that's the case, and I hope that is. But I do worry that the Lakers will be impatient and will fire Hurley way too early. Because right now, Hurley can be the head coach for UConn for like the rest of his life. I mean, that's how much power he has in UConn. And that's how good of a head coach he is. Like, I'm sure that they would have him as their head coach for the rest of his career if that's what he wanted. And so it's just a really interesting situation. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see if the Lakers do end up hiring him to be their head coach. And for UConn, this is a big blow. If they lose Danny Hurley, they are losing by far the best coach in college basketball at the moment. That is a huge blow. And I assume that they will potentially promote one of their assistants. If not, they'll look for a big name outside of the UConn program. But it'll be really interesting to see what UConn does if they do end up losing Hurley. But yeah, this is a very interesting situation. The last thing I want to mention, I heard yesterday that UConn has not offered Hurley an extension, which is very interesting. If that's true, that's kind of insane. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they haven't signed him to a massive contract. But yeah, very interesting update with the Lakers head coach search. If I were them, I would be very interested in Danny Hurley. But you have to be patient. You have to realize that, you're probably not a championship contending team. You're probably not a serious contender, so you need to be patient, and you need to give Hurley the time to transition to the NBA, since he's never coached at the NBA level before. And you just have to be patient, don't rush things, and allow things to play out. Because I do think Hurley is a great basketball mind, and he can be an amazing head coach in the NBA. But you got to give it time, and you got to allow things to grow and develop. But those are my thoughts about the Lakers head coach search. We're going to close out this episode of the podcast by talking about a few receivers in the NFL who recently signed contract extensions, and we'll talk about the wide receiver market in general, as well as what I expect Brandon Ayuk's next contract to look like. Before we get into that, I'm going to take another break, and then we will get into the final topic for today's episode. But I'll take a quick break, and I will be right back in just a second. Alright, let's close out today's episode of the podcast by talking about a few receivers in the NFL who recently signed contract extensions. I also want to talk about the receiver market in general and how it's changing and evolving. And then lastly, I want to talk about 49ers receiver Brandon Ayuk, who is looking for a contract extension, hasn't gotten one from the 49ers, and honestly, it looks like he might be traded by the 49ers fairly soon, so we'll talk about all of that. The receivers who recently signed contract extensions that I want to talk about are Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, and Justin Jefferson. Let's get started by talking about Nico Collins. I'm going to pull up his contract information. So recently, he signed a 3-year deal worth a little under $73 million total. That's a little over $32 million a year in fully guaranteed money. That's not per year. The fully guaranteed money in total across the entire duration of the contract is a little over $32 million. Nico Collins last year had a fantastic season. He's 25 years old, huge outside receiver, 6'4", 218 pounds, was very productive last year. One of the more efficient receivers in the NFL, whether you're looking at high-volume receivers or not, he was just super efficient. And the fact that he is a high-volume receiver makes that even more impressive. He's an outside receiver who was super effective against man coverage, was one of the best deep threats in the league last year. So he's awesome, fantastic player. Only has one season of good production, and the first 2 seasons of his NFL career were not very good. And so I think that's why he only got a 3-year deal. Honestly, I was thinking he might have been able to get more than that, but he did sign a contract after 1 season of good production. Maybe the Texans were thinking, we're taking on a bit of a risk here, so we're going to give you maybe less guaranteed money than you might want. And so I think this is actually a very good contract for the Texans. Nico Collins gets paid. The Texans aren't having to give him too much fully guaranteed money across the entire contract. And if he continues playing at the level that he did last year, this is going to be a great contract. I mean, I think he is the best receiver on the roster. I think he's better than both Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs had a rough second half of the year last year, and Tank Dell is awesome, very good. He's a rising star in his own right. But I just think Nico Collins is better. I do. I'm very high on Nico Collins. If he has another strong season next year, he doesn't have to have the same counting stats, because he likely won't, playing alongside Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. However, if the efficiency is still elite, if he's still a great deep threat who's awesome against man coverage, I will be pounding the table for him as a clear top 10 receiver, and I might even go higher than that. That's how big of a Nico Collins fan I am. I think he's special. He's an awesome player, and I love this contract for the Houston Texans. Next up, we got Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle signed his contract after Nico Collins, and he signed a 3-year deal worth a little under $85 million per year. It's a little under $36 million in fully guaranteed money across the entire contract. And now he is being paid like a top 5 receiver. It's interesting that the Dolphins are willing to pay elite money to 2 separate receivers. That's interesting. Not a lot of other teams are doing that. I know the Eagles have done that. They aren't paying A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith almost $30 million. Devontae Smith is making around $25 million, and A.J. Brown is making $32 million per year. But still, That's a lot of money they're giving out to their receivers, which is an interesting team building decision. This is a lot of money for Jalen Waddle. He is very good, though. I think he has 2 seasons in which he is ranked top 10 among receivers in yards per route run, which is really impressive. I do think the fact that he has played alongside Tyreek Hill and it has been, the wide receiver 2 in Miami, playing alongside a unique and all-time great talent like Hill, I think that does make it a little bit easier for him to produce. And I do wonder how he would play and perform if he were in a different situation where he didn't have another awesome receiver taking some of the defensive attention away from him. But still, great player. I like him a lot. I think he's awesome. I think he is one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL. But this is a good amount of money. And we'll see how this works out. What this does for the Dolphins offense moving forward, especially when they pay Tua, because I think they're going to end up paying Tua a big contract. I think they're going to give him a sizable contract extension at some point, and we'll see how that affects the team's ability, to build their roster moving forward. Next up, I wanted to discuss Justin Jefferson's contract. So he signed his contract a few days ago, and his was let's work with me, computer. I know his contract. It was a 4-year deal worth $140 million in total money. In total guaranteed money, it was a little under $89 million total across the entire contract. I actually thought he was going to get more money. I mean, he's being paid as he's the highest paid receiver in the NFL right now, which he deserves. But honestly, I thought he could get a ridiculous amount of guaranteed money. The fully guaranteed money is only like $22.3 million guaranteed, if I remember that correctly. I thought he could have gotten more, honestly. I mean, I really did. I think this contract could be quite team-friendly down the road. It's a lot of money to pay to a receiver, but when you draft a rookie quarterback like they just did in J.J. McCarthy, you need to keep the best receiver in the NFL. And I think Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the NFL. I think he is a Hall of Fame talent. I think he is a special, special player. And so I love this contract. I think it's worth it. And I honestly was surprised that Justin Jefferson didn't get more money. And that may sound crazy, but yeah, it's an insane contract. And I think it's actually team-friendly. But I love the deal, love the contract for him, love the contract for the Vikings, and I think it will work out for both parties. One thing that I wanted to talk about is the receiver market changing and how it's evolving, or how it has evolved recently. And now receivers are starting to make insane money. Like, they're making lots and lots of money now. Not quite as much money as quarterbacks are making, but the gap is starting to close a little bit. And I saw someone recently on Twitter talking about how because receivers are starting to make so much more money, we may see teams' draft strategies start to change. You may see teams in the draft start to draft receivers earlier because it right now it's looking like, having a talented receiver on a rookie deal is becoming extremely valuable. And so we could see that affect the way that teams approach the NFL draft. And if that happens, that'll be really interesting. And we could see receiver prospects start to get drafted higher and higher. And so that's a very interesting result of how the receiver market is changing. And we'll see if that actually, if that actually happens, if the NFL draft actually starts to become affected by the way the receiver market is evolving. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we get out of here is Brandon Ayuk and his contract extension. I know he and the 49ers have been in contract negotiations for a while. They haven't been able to get anything done. And Brandon Ayuk has been very vocal on social media that he's unhappy about it, that he wants to get paid. And he should. He's coming off a phenomenal season, He's 26 years old, was elite last year. He's a great route runner, very efficient, very effective against man coverage and zone coverage. He's an awesome receiver. Whenever he does get a new deal, I think he will be paid around $30 million per year. I think he will receive a contract similar to what Amon-Ra St. Brown got. And so I think he will be making $30 million per year. If he doesn't get $30 million, I think he's getting at least $29 million per year. And maybe the fully guaranteed money is a bit higher. But I think he's going to get more money than Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith and Nico Collins. And if he doesn't quite get Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown money, I think he's going to get Amon-Ra St. Brown money and get around $30 million per year. That is my expectations. But I do say that as someone who is a massive fan of Brandon Ayuk. So I could be overrating him a lot, but man, I think he is a special talent, a special player who's young, who's coming off a elite season. He needs to get paid, and the 49ers, I'm not sure if they want to pay two receivers, like top 10 receivers, which is what they would have to do if they sign Brandon Ayuk to a large contract. But man, losing Brandon Ayuk would hurt them a lot, and I think Brandon Ayuk is worth a sizable contract extension. Well, that's all I have for today's episode of the podcast. Those are my thoughts about some recent contract extensions we've seen for some top receivers in the NFL. That's all I have for today's episode. I had a lot of fun recording it. It was a good episode. I hope y'all had a good time listening to it. That's all I have for today. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.